Hello, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours. This is episode number 47 of our ongoing series about being less shitty at tabletop role-playing games. I am here to answer your questions. You are here to see those questions answered, and maybe, just maybe, we're going to make a better game master out of you today. How does this work? Well, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Somebody in the distant past, or the not so distant past, submitted questions, which I read and thought were interesting, and decided to answer them on the show. And so that's what the show is. We're going to do 3 questions today, 2 of which will be relatively short, one of which will definitely not be very short, and we're going to talk about a couple of different things that might help you be a better game master, regardless of the game that you are playing. So our first question today comes from Gnome Skull, which is a great name. The skull is the best part of the gnome. And it's about passing the torch.
I am Raymond, Gnome Skull on Twitch. So my DM recently approached me about handing off the game that we are playing to me. Prior to this campaign, I had been the DM for this group, though he has less time to commit to preparing, so the handoff of DMing should be pretty natural and smooth. My main concern is that he wants to continue with the story that he has already established. His main reason for this is that he feels that it will hold player attention better, and also that there's still a lot of good story to be told. I was interested if you had any input on this handoff and picking up a story that someone else has already put a lot of time into establishing, especially with that person on the at the table. Thanks in advance.
So I want to be really clear about the question I'm going to answer, just in case I've missed the point or I'm not understanding. Though I guess if I am misunderstanding, there's anything you can do about it except maybe yell at me in chat if you're here, or tweet at me and tell me that I've missed the point and I'm a big dummy. So yeah, let me be clear about the question, and then I'm going to answer the question that I think that you're asking. So someone has been DMing your group for a while, and now they don't have the time to DM. They don't have the time for prep. Obviously, they have the time for play. And now mid-campaign, they want to take their notes and they want to give them to you, who has more time, so that you can carry on from where they left off. Also, they want to continue to play in that campaign. So they want to have a character in the campaign that they were previously running, and they want you to run it. I think that's what we're talking about here. So I don't think that's an impossible situation to enjoy. I think that's totally doable. But there are a few red flags here that I'm going to have to address before we carry on. Firstly, the idea that the campaign is going to continue because the GM thinks that there's lots of story to tell feels a little bit weird to me. Maybe I'm just an untrusting pessimist, but when a game master says there's more story to tell, my initial response is, well, I mean, no shit, but you're not going to be the one telling it. I have this fear that your former game master just wants to GMPC the game, and you know my opinions on GMPCs if you watched the last episode, and that maybe it's only a matter of time before every session ends with you getting notes on the game, like, oh, this NPC wouldn't have done that, or the accent you're using for this guy is wrong, or, oh, yeah, this dungeon should be in this hex, not the one you put it in. It feels a little like an actor wrote a screenplay and wants to star in the movie, but the studio is forcing another director to actually run the thing. I worry that you're going to be held to a certain expectation by this player, and that it's not going to be a fun game. I'm worried for you, Gnome Skull. I want you to have a good time. I think the trick here is that maybe both you and the game master are thinking about the story as something that is immutable, that the GM already wrote, and that you are merely strutting and fretting your time upon the game. And I don't want you to be actors in someone else's story while you're trying to share the stage with them. I think that I think that it's possible to prevent this from turning into a horrible backseaty train wreck, but it's going to require you having a nice, firm talk with your former game master. You can, if you want to do this, if this feels like a reasonable resolution for you and you feel comfortable, you can sit down with your game master and say something like, hey game master, I've also been enjoying the situation in the campaign world that this game is set in, and I would love to hear about the themes and elements that you've built into the game, and then let them lore dump all over the place, and you can say, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to take your notes, and I'm going to use them as a starting point to build something I think everyone's really going to like. But it won't be your exact story anymore, because as a good GM, I don't believe in story. I believe in emergent narrative. I believe in letting the game be what it is. And I hope that you can respect my agency as a game master and as a player who wants to make my own impact on the game. I hope this experience will let you, my former game master, feel like your work is being used and valued, and that you'll have an opportunity to be surprised by my take on what you've built. Then, what's great, and this is the best part, then you get to do the, am I talking to an adult human or a whiny idiot baby test, right? You ready? So here's how you do the test between, are you an adult human or are you a whiny idiot baby? If your former GM gets excited and thanks you for being respectful and cool about including what they've done so far, expresses gratitude for getting to experience the world from another direction, and they're excited to see what you do with that material, you are discussing this with a grown-up human being. If they demand you stick to their pre-designed story, if they say they have a vision for the game and they expect you to adhere to it, or they generally just kick up a fuss or have a tantrum, you're probably playing a game with a whiny idiot baby. Now, apply your own adjustments to the test as needed, but keep in mind that the game that you're going to be playing will affect this, because some games make people feel more attached to their prep than others. If it's a game like D&D, with a ton of prep being done and handed over, it's going to be more work for both of you to navigate away on your own track. Because in D&D, especially if you're in kind of like mid-arc, in D&D there is an impetus to be prepared, to have maps, to have NPCs, to try to tie things together. So that's going to be harder to pull from your GM's fingers. They might feel a little like they want to stay attached to it. They may not know any better. If you're playing a game like a Dungeon World, you can bend and manipulate around the fronts while still kind of paying homage to their existence. The trick is here is that, and this is the reason why I chose that analogy, right, is this whiny idiot baby, is it's not the baby's fault. The game and the way that they learned how to play that game and the kinds of things that games teach people are true about being the game master create these kind of whiny idiot baby game masters. And I'm not assuming that your GM is like that, because if your GM isn't like that, this isn't a problem. You're just feeling anxious about it maybe being one. The other thing you need to consider going into this is your players, right? They're not expected, I hope, just to take this change in stride without getting to put in their own opinions, right? Does the rest of the group want you to game master? Do the rest of the group want you to play in this world? What do they want? Talk to them. Ask them. Are they interested in having you pick up where the GM left off? If so, if they're behind you, then great. What does the whole group want? I think that so much of this question relies on the integrity of the person giving you the torch. It's not about metagaming. It's not about GM authority. Once they're not the GM anymore, they have to play as a player and do so in good faith. And you as the GM have to do so in good faith as well. And your job as the game master is to create a world in which the players are able to be surprised. And so are you. You owe that to yourself. So I guess if you want to just play on as the GM anticipated, if you just want to be their puppet, then okay, that's fine. You're allowed. But then they're really just topping from the bottom, aren't they? They're running the game from a player's seat, using you as their puppet. And that doesn't sound like it does you any favors. In the same way that if you accept their material and then you just turn it around on them and totally destroy everything they've built, that's you being a bit of a dick, right? Your sadism doesn't fit into that model. Now, these are all outlier edge cases. I don't think that most of this is going to be true for your game. I think that what you're looking for is a way that you can do justice to the narrative that's been built while still providing yourself and your players with a surprising experience that lets them make hard choices to make it a fun role-playing game. Right? That's okay. It's good. That's what you want. But you all have to want it together. And it may be bumpy, right? It may not be that split binary, is the GM perfect and ready to turn it over, or is the GM a total fucking jerk off and makes it impossible for you? The GM is going to have some trouble because, like in so many situations where we become emotionally tied to something, the GM's prep might be their wife, right? It might be their beloved, their true love that they simply do not have the time to love, and they may be turning them over to you, saying, "Here, Lancelot, protect that which I most care for." And then you're like, "Nah, I'm gonna go make some babies with this thing." And that's okay for both of you to feel those things. Help your GM understand that you are doing your best to do homage while also making this your own game. You deserve that. The GM might say to you, "Hey, so I don't really like what you're doing with this NPC. I feel like maybe you're doing them wrong." And you can be like, "Yo, they're my NPC now. Back the fuck off." But like in the kindest possible way, right? If you're interested in taking notes, that's fine. That's great. You have someone who's there to offer you help, but give them time to learn that it's your game now, right? Let them enjoy the cool shit that you're going to do with their game. Trust. Share. But give them that gentle fuck off and give me space, right? Have boundaries. I'm going to say this in an effort to bolster and empower you. You do not have to play games with idiot babies. And if that's the direction that it ends up going, or that's the way you start to feel, it's your choice how much idiotic babyhood you consent to. But it's not always that clear cut. Sometimes you can say to these people, "I trust you to learn. I trust you to grow." Let that happen. Let them let go in their own time, but trust your own boundaries around the kind of game you want to play and how you want to play it.
Hey Adam, so I've been trying to break into the Twitch RPG scene for the past year, and I was wondering if you could share some advice on growing and retaining viewers for those kinds of broadcasts. I was also hoping if you could share some advice on making the more crunchy parts of systems like combat in Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun, etc. More interesting for viewers to watch. Thanks.
Ashley Nova. All right, Ashley. So I called this question making boring garbage fun to watch. And my first reaction here is to tease you about choosing Pathfinder, but I'm not going to. I'm not gonna bother teasing you about this because I don't think that's what this is about. And also, I don't think that Pathfinder is necessarily a bad choice for what you're trying to accomplish. And some of that comes from knowing how much you know about and care about Pathfinder as a game. I know Ashley better than maybe most people who submit questions. And And I think that, honestly, I'm not going to give you a hard time about choosing to play Pathfinder because I bet you lots of people already have. So here's the thing. I think it's really cool to like a game. I think it's cool to like a complicated game. I think it's cool to know and understand that game and want to share it with people. I think it's cool to invest time and energy into caring about games and sharing those games with the people that are around you and then the internet at large. I am a person who is guilty of doing this constantly. Pathfinder is as complicated in its own way as Burning Wheel. It's not about complication that makes this a problem. The other thing is that just because some dude on the internet doesn't like your favorite game doesn't mean you're not supposed to play it. Or that person has the right to give you shit for liking it or wanting to stream it. So fucking rock on, Ashley. You're sharing a game you love with people, and that's fucking cool. Now, keep in mind that because I fucking hate Pathfinder, I'm not going to give you a ton of like Pathfinder specific advice on this, mostly because I'm readily going to acknowledge that I avoid Pathfinder like a plague because it's not the game for me. I've played it, I hated its guts, and I will never play it again on purpose, but I can talk your ear off about complex systems and audience buy-in and all that crap. So I hope that Pathfinder has a rule in there somewhere for regrowing lost ears, which I'm sure it does. God knows there's enough source books. See, I'm not going to tease you, but Pathfinder's a fair game. So, you want to be successful in doing role-playing game content on Twitch. Here we go. The basic stuff that you are going to need to make this happen is technical stuff for you and your players, system mastery by you and your players, or at least you, but if it's just you, get ready to do a lot of heavy lifting. Players who are charismatic and interesting to watch. You yourself qualify in that. A healthy supply of both patience and tolerance, and a way to get people invested in and watching your game. It's not nothing. That's a lot of stuff. Let's start at the top and work our way down. When I say technical stuff, I mean each of your players is going to need at least a decent webcam and a decent mic. Now, someone is going to argue, I'm sure they already are in chat, someone is going to argue that a webcam isn't necessary. But I'm sorry, but with a game as visually demanding as Pathfinder, it's going to be something that people need to watch, not just listen to. A game as complicated as Pathfinder, without a clear visual representation of what's going on, is a barrier to entry. And so a decent webcam and all of your players in their own respectively well-lit room so that we can see them is necessary. I feel like at this point in the game, if your group is taking this seriously, they all need a Yeti and a C920 webcam. Now, people are going to argue about what the whatever details are. The C920 and the Yeti are basically standard entry into broadcasting tier items I suggest everybody start with. They're expensive to some people and they're inexpensive to other people because expense is relative. But that's where I would begin my journey. And this is across the board. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be possible from the get-go, right? Like asking your friends who don't care as much as you do about broadcasting on the internet to spend those amounts of money to do this with you just may not be reasonable. But this is not 2012, right? I feel like as the competition ramps up and there are more and more of these shows pulling in viewers, what's going to keep your viewers tuned in after they find the channel in the first place is a solid technical presentation. I personally, speaking from experience, have attended a non-zero number of streams with 1-digit or 2-digit, like low 2-digit number of audience members, of viewers. I've tuned in to be like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at who's streaming D&D. What's going on? if I can't see everyone clearly, and if anybody has like really bad audio quality, I just can't expend any more time on watching. I'll find something else to watch. And I think that this is true for everyone. I think this is a standard thing across the board. And I know this is frustrating because it's not really feasible to expect everyone in your group to maintain a certain level of gear unless you're the one paying for it. I really think this is a big gap in the whole myth of like anyone can stream. Like, yes, anyone can do a show on Twitch, but not everyone can succeed because there's a monetary cost involved in being worth watching. It's a bummer, but it's true, I think. And it gets exacerbated when it comes to RPGs because as the person who wants to do the thing most, you not only have to make sure you're taking care of your own quality, but you have to be assured that everyone else in the group is doing the same. Which is fucking daunting. I wish there was something to say here other than like, yes, this is a thing that will cost money, fucking do it. But that's the reality of the matter. Again, this is just my suggestion. If you have a player with no cam and no proper mic and they just have a headset mic and that's tolerable for you and for your needs, if you don't feel that way about it, then don't listen to me. But from my perspective, and I think I have something to say about this, that's what you need. Now, you, again, as the person in charge, the person that wants to do this, you're going to need to work out all the technical stuff about streaming it, which is actually a lot less frustrating than having everyone get on board with audio and video issues, as long as your internet is good. It's not that complicated, but it does add a layer on top of what you're already doing. Roll20 in a Chrome window, Skype, because even though it's not 2012 anymore, it's still one of the better options, Skype or Zoom if you can pay for it. OBS to capture it all. I prefer XSplit, but maybe you don't. And some overlays to make it look nice. Now, don't worry about the overlays being too fancy. Clean and simple is better than fancy any day. Some people will go out of their way to spend a lot of time and energy or money buying real fancy looking overlays. The overlays are window dressing. They are the frame. And if Refused taught us anything, it's that good frames can't save bad paintings. Now, again, with Pathfinder, people are going to want to see that map. People are going to want to see tokens moving around because it's a tactical experience. Make the effort to make that a part of your presentation. So when it comes to choosing players, when you're playing Pathfinder or any similarly system mastery driven game, and let's not split hairs here. Pathfinder demands that you know how to play. Pathfinder allows for no fuckery in terms of making poor choices. But you, as the GM, you know that you have to pick a group that's going to fit that. So there's essentially two choices around player skill. You can pick players who, as a group, know how to play Pathfinder already, who are making tactical and strategic decisions, who care about optimization. You need a whole team of Pathfinder pros. Or you can go with a group of newbies and make it a sort of, I'm going to teach people how to play Pathfinder as we go kind of stream. Splitting the difference here is the wrong choice because it puts so much pressure on the pros to teach the newbies how to play that unless you get 100% buy-in from them, you're going to end up with what I have basically started to call the pandemic problem. Now, the pandemic problem is you're playing a board game, and maybe you're familiar with the board game Pandemic. The board game Pandemic is a game in which a group of players function cooperatively. They function cooperatively as a unit to defeat a global series of pandemics, a global series of illnesses. And so when you play Pandemic, each player makes their choice, but they're all functioning as a piece of an individual player, right? One player is essentially the hand, one is the feet, one is the head, and they make these decisions. But if you play Pandemic with one person who knows the game and 4 people who don't play the game, that person is going to either have to tell everyone else what to do, or they are going to have to suck it up and watch everyone fail the game for them. It is a poor choice in design because it's very difficult to work around. Pandemic has the same problem as Pathfinder. If you have a group with mixed skill levels, everyone on the game has to play at the same skill level, or else you end up with one person carrying the entire match. And that's not fun to watch. That's really fucking boring to watch. Because why would you need anyone else if you just have this one person? So you can either have a group of pros who are all really good, or you can have mostly people who are not that good, and you can watch them learn together, right? Now, the reason I think that system mastery among your players is something to consider is that with a game like Pathfinder, your audience is going to care so fucking much about the players making smart decisions. At the time of recording this episode, I'm running 2 5th edition D&D games, and 5e D&D is pretty middle ground in terms of skilled play, but it's still an aspect. And the fans, the people who tune in week on week to watch Roll20 Presents or watch Court of Swords, are very invested in the tactical choices that the players make. These are games whose continued publication relies on feverish development of rules understanding and skill. You're going to attract an audience by choosing that sort of game that has a near infinite amount of fucks to give about what the players are doing. And it's your job as producer of the show to create content that appeals to the audience that you want. Choosing Pathfinder is putting you in a place to have to deal with that kind of audience response. Picking the right players and framing the show around that skill level choice is something you can do to take some of that pressure off. But you're going to have to acknowledge that the players care about the rules. This is the thing that's going to get them to buy in. Watching the players make smart decisions is something that will give you retention later on, but Jesus, get ready for it. I think as an aside, this is why a lot of people go with more kind of rules, fluffy, the narrative matters more games like Dungeon World or Blades or less intensive stuff when they broadcast. I think people choose the so-called story games to play because there are fewer bad choices for players to make. People can tune in to watch people do fun stuff and do silly voices, and they don't have to buy in quite as hard on the mechanics. There's no screaming danger sense during a game of Microscope. So I think that people lean into those kinds of games. So beyond that, beyond the choice of game, beyond all the technical stuff, you need to pick people who are not boring to watch. People who are able to both play the game and give a shit about that game and be entertaining doing so. People who are team players, people who play in good faith, people who don't act like fucking self-centered jackasses like a lot of tabletop role players do. I'm not saying they need to be perfect, but I'm saying that sometimes excellent role players make terrible cast members. And that sometimes the inverse is true. That great cast members don't give enough of a fuck about the game they're playing and make terrible players in role-playing games. Sometimes you can find a balance between the two that makes a game like this so magnificent, right? If you can fall on a player who is both really invested in the game, really comfortable at playing the game to an audience, and knows how to do that thing where they allow the chat to feel like they're influencing play, but still have their own thing and not play their game by committee, you have found something magical. Give people time on this. Recognize that people warm up to this role, but do not give them an infinite amount of time. If you have a player who is being a disruptive shit, even if they're great at Pathfinder after 10 episodes, or who just isn't cut out to do the talking to their webcam role-playing game thing, you as a producer of a show that you want to be successful need to step in and ask them to get the fuck out. This might be about scheduling. This might be about game mastery. This might be about attitude towards the other players. This might be about stage fright. This might be about all kinds of behavior that just doesn't fit. Your job here is, Christ, you're layering on so much responsibility, right? Because as a social, I'm going to take a quick digression here, a quick personal digression. So you have so many roles, right? You are the game master. Your job is to play the game as it's written. Your job is to respect the rules. Your job is to play by your part of the game's rules and to make the game work the same way your players do. So you're a game master. You're a producer. And so as a producer, your job is to make a show that is fun to watch, to gain a large audience, and to maintain that audience from episode to episode and within each episode. Your job is to choose cast members, choose a game master, run the show, and to do all of these things with that one goal in mind: make the show successful. Your job is also to be a decent human being to the people you're playing with. And sometimes, and here's the great fucking curse of these things, playing role-playing games with people will grant you a kind of emotional intimacy with those people, which can sometimes develop into friendship. Now you are in business with your friends playing a game that has very specific rules around how to socialize with those people. I promise you, Ashley Nova, that you will come into conflict around these roles. There will be conflict. You will have to deal with this. Sometimes your friends will not be good at role-playing games, which will make the show hard to play. Sometimes people will behave a certain way on the show that makes the show less fun to watch. Sometimes you will need to make decisions as a game master that are bad for the producer aspect of the game. Sometimes you'll have to make a GM job that makes the show not as good. Like, you are constantly in a state of self-conflict. And the hardest thing to do is to be in conflict between producer and friend. I promise you that there is no easy way to ask a friend not to be on a show anymore because the producer part of you knows that they are just not cut out to do so for whatever reason. I hope that you don't end up in that position, but be ready for it. Also, if you have to have that conversation, for the love of God, do not fucking Nuremberg yourself here. Don't be like, listen, honey, it's the numbers. I don't want you to leave the show. I don't want you to go. I love playing role-playing games with you, but like, look, the numbers are low. The fans made me do it. Don't be that asshole. Take responsibility for the decisions that you have to make. It's hard. It sucks. It can make personal stuff difficult. But if you're all adults, you can negotiate this situation. And hopefully they know that they're not good for the show. And if they disagree, ultimately you're the producer. And you have to make the decisions that make your show the best. It's hard to be a good friend and run what you hope to be a business. Guess what? Capitalism fucking sucks. This is the stuff that happens. Anyway, you can work towards helping people be better on screen, right? Sometimes we play games with people who start off not that good. I am one of those people. I was a great game master. I was a totally inexperienced streamer, and JP was patient enough that the game master part of me could continue to be good while the streamer part of me grew. I try to do that with the people that I play with, and I don't do it passively. I do it actively. I say to people, hey, so when this stuff comes up, I know that you really want to engage with it, but is it okay if we don't? Right? I know that rules stuff really gets to you, but can we just make a ruling and move on? I'll address it during the game when things are less tense. I know that it bothers you. Is that okay for you? Can you do that? This is the thing that you're going to improve at too, Ashley Nova, and other people like Ashley. You're going to improve at being patient with yourself and with the group. And keep in mind that you're going to look back at your first broadcast and you're going to laugh at how awkward you all were. It happens to everyone. When you're done with this episode of Office Hours, go back and watch the very first Swan Song GM turn. I'm not as good at this as I was then. People improve at stuff. This patience and tolerance approach needs to be taken with the whole experience. Be patient and tolerant of yourself, of your players, and your audience. And I'm going to say this here and now. You are going to have days where this feels like too much work, where you're one shitty, toxic YouTube comment away on a day where you've run an episode where you know you fucked up the graphic or the grapple rules, you screwed up a scene transition, one of your players was being salty because they can't roll above an 8 to save their life, and you just think to yourself, Jesus fucking Christ, I need a break. I want to make sure that you're giving yourself permission both to take that break, and if you get to that dark place where the whole fucking experience is just more harm than good and you need to take a space, do it. Or quit. It's okay to quit. I think it can be hard because being a GM is such tough work sometimes, especially in a demanding game like Pathfinder. You're already doing so much stuff. There are already so many moving pieces just in the game, and it can be hard to have a group of people in the background shouting, hey, moron, you're doing it wrong. Moron, hey. Especially when those people are the people that you need to stick around and keep watching so you can feel like you're being a professional, like you're doing the job. So be patient and only take as much stress as you can. Do not push yourself. Do not, for the love of God, push your players so hard that it breaks you or them. If a player comes to you and says, hey, I'm having a really hard time because there's all these negative YouTube comments about my performance being terrible, and like, I don't think I can handle this anymore, do not be a self-serving douchebag and convince them to stay when you know that it would be better to let them go. Do not fucking do that. Come on. I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm just saying, like, please, please. Because, again, now you're in conflict between friend Ashley and producer Ashley. Producer Ashley, you need to decide whether she gets to win in those kinds of conflicts. Producer Ashley going for the goal versus friend Ashley trying to be a good friend, they're not totally incompatible, but if you put producer Ashley over friend Ashley, you're gonna lose some friends. I know it sounds scary and hard, but do the work, be transparent about this, talk to people about how you have a goal and you want them to be in on that goal with you, but that ultimately there may be conflict. So how do you get people invested in your game? How do you get people to stick around and watch? Well, so first you have to lure them in to watch. And this advice is the same as any fucking Twitch stream, right? Get people that have existing audiences to help out where they can. Find people who can share your content with their audience. Be present on social media. Do the fucking hustle, right? Keep a regular schedule. Do normal Twitch stuff. The other thing is that you're going to want to attract Pathfinder fans by engaging in those communities. Right? So engage in existing RPG communities. Do not, for the love of fucking God, do not just go into an existing role-playing game with a bunch of people watching and then just say like, hey, I'm doing a show. Spam, spam, spam. Don't be like, I'm also a GM. Spam, spam, spam. Make space in that community because you care about the community, and then let people come to your community as a result. You want people to be like, hey, I like Ashley. Then, once you've built up that social capital, you can turn it into viewer capital. Do not expect, demand, or try to absorb viewer capital just because you're like, hey, this is an RPG stream. I'm also an RPG stream. Come check out my shit. That's rude, and you're gonna look like an asshole if you do that. So don't. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying don't. In fact, getting permission to advertise your show, to talk about your work, is a great part of the conversation you can have with someone who's already part of that structure, who already has an audience. Like, ask them, Reach out, ask them on Twitter, ask them on Discord, and say, hey, like, would it be cool if I like talked about my show? Like, I think we do some similar stuff. I'm playing a different game. I really like your work. Do you mind? And if they're not an asshole, they'll probably be okay with that. They'll talk about a way to do that feels okay for them and gives you some space to talk about your stuff. But that's because you've engaged in that community, right? You want to be a member of a community so that people know you already, that you build up that social capital. It's basically the same as Kickstarter, right? You launch a Kickstarter late because you build up social capital that you can turn into fiscal capital later on. You can engage in non-Twitch communities too. Go to RPG communities online that are already Pathfinder focused and talk about that stuff, right? Talk about, hey, how would you run Pathfinder online? Ask questions. Don't make statements. Don't just barge into, alt.games.pathfinder and be like, hey, I'm running a game. Hey, I'm running a game. Check it out, right? Unless there's a space or there are rules for self-promotion. Honestly, I think most of the time, unless people are very bored, they don't just look through a streamer directory, right? Now, you can use some of the tools that Twitch already has, like, categories or communities. But for the most part, nobody ever fucking streams anything to a category other than D&D, but that's a whole other idiotic mess I don't want to go into here. You choose the category you think is going to get you an audience. Twitch needs to fix their shit. Anyway, connect with other streamers' audiences in a way that makes you a part of their community. Spread the word organically and be patient. It'll happen slowly over time as you get more proficient at it. And I know, Ashley, I'm addressing you specifically on this. I know that all of this is stuff you're already doing. I see you doing it. This is why I'm spending so much time on this question, because I know you're already doing a lot of this right. I'm just saying this for everyone else. What's going to get people to keep watching is investment in the ongoing narrative of your game. Investment in narrative requires characters that people give a shit about in a situation they give a shit about. This is just basic good GMing. I think this is where being a good GM, knowing that you have an audience and that you're creating a show, you're not just playing a game, keeps your players' attention and demand the same high caliber play from them. That should be true of any game you're playing. You asked specifically how to make combat in Pathfinder more fun to watch. And that's... fuck. That's a lot more difficult because, Jesus Christ, I have a hard enough time with this in 5e. You have a monumental task set before you here. The players will be invested because they get to make good decisions or bad decisions. Your audience will be invested because they feel like there's tension and that the pacing is good. Things don't drag. I don't mean that fights go on that are short. I think you can do an episode that's 4 hours of a single combat if that combat continues to flow quickly. You can't not do combat in Pathfinder. If you are playing Pathfinder, combat is so important. You have to play it. You have to play it as it's written because people will demand that. You cannot skip stuff. You are stuck doing this combat. So God damn it, you better do it with as much love as possible. Pacing will happen well if everyone at the table understands the rules. The big thing here is fluidity. Keep shit moving from round to round. Do not allow people to sit on their ass trying to decide. Tell them off screen, do not have this fight on screen. Tell them off screen, you need to pick your actions quickly. We cannot, for the love of God, have indecision in our game. Every second of slowdown makes this game boring to watch, and we will have people leave. That's just how it goes. You may have to hack Pathfinder to do this. Every time you have to stop to look up a rule, every time there's an argument over how to apply the rules, you will lose viewers. It's just boring to watch people argue. Out of character. In character, there's some question there, but we're not talking about that. What you've done by choosing to play Pathfinder is set a high hurdle for yourself, but it can be surmounted if you have the right players. The other thing here is to give your audience as clear a picture of what's going on as is possible. On Court of Swords or Roll20 Presents, I am spoiled as fuck because I have every token and map in the marketplace at my command. So for me, it's easy. I have so much to choose from, I can make my combats look fun and clear, and I've spent the time that I need to master Roll20 to make it look good and work well quickly. Many of the maps you see in Court of Swords, like if I'm like, haha, a combat, many of those I am alt-tabbed over while the players are making their plan, frantically looking for, grabbing maps, stretching them out, putting terrain, dropping monsters, pulling them out of the monster manual, organizing the initiative order, getting all that ready so that when they're finally like, cool, I draw my sword, I can be like, here we go. You know, you're going to have to be a bit more discerning because I'm cheating and I have a lot more tools available, but keep in mind that the purpose of a combat map is primarily to make combat clear and obvious. Clear and obvious means quick and without debates about who's standing where and how far a 5-foot step will get you. So even if your maps aren't fancy, you want everyone to get familiar with how Roll20 and the character sheets work. There's a lot of mileage you can get out of automation in that system. I would consider mastery of Roll20 as important as mastery of Pathfinder here, because it's just as tedious to be like, what page is this rule on, as it is to be like, what button do I press to attack again? It'll help a lot if you let it. And like I said at the top of the question, I think that with grid-based combat setup like you have, or like I have in Court of Swords, making it clear and fun to watch is important, or at least clear in a snapshot, because a lot of people watch roleplay shows alt-tab doing something else. Playing another game, flipping through Twitter, whatever. They're listening to you, but they might not be watching. But as soon, I swear to you, as soon as things get confusing, they're going to alt-tab over and just quickly look at the map so they can figure out where everybody is so they can tab back over to playing Diablo, right? You need to be able to make it so that at a glance, they can see what's going on. Combat has to be high stakes, interesting to watch, and it has to add something to the ongoing narrative. And it's not all those three things you're going to lose people. So I suppose it's a combination of good encounter design, using the tools to the fullest possible advantage and mastering the system. Now, I see people in chat saying like, oh my God, that's how I watch those shows. We know. I fucking know. I know. It's great. It's fine. I want you watching. I don't need you watching 100% of the time. It's totally okay to tab out. Now, keep in mind, again, I mentioned this and I talked about this a lot. Producing a show is one skill, GMing is another, and trying to do both is a Herculean task. And I'm not saying this to be immodest. I can do it. I have practiced. I can run XSplit on one screen. I can run Roll20 on another, and I can be looking at my players on a third screen. I can be looking at chat in a fourth environment, and I can more or less keep all that shit straight in my head. But it's taken me 2 years of practice to get to where I am. And I've still got so much to learn. So again, come back to that patience thing. I know, Ashley, that Pathfinder is your jam. I'm not going to tell you to play a different game. Acknowledge there are strengths and weaknesses to the choice that you've made. And be patient with building the show that you want around those choices. Get your players to help you, have them acknowledge and buy into your dream, and you're going to have a lot easier time of it. Then just play and learn and do it only as long as it makes sense for you. Don't beat yourself up trying to do this. Good luck. Also, because Ashley didn't mention it, and I think I saw her in chat, but because this is going on YouTube, www.twitch.tv/AshleyNova, okay? If you want to see if Ashley followed my advice. No pressure. No pressure, Ashley. Good luck.
Evening, Adam. I've got a friend who's been my player for a couple of months, and has recently taken up GMing. He's very new, both as a player and a GM, and he makes a fair few mistakes. As I am his dungeon master, he's asked for my help and advice on how to improve, but he's also very sensitive and easy to upset. How do I go about helping a newbie GM without offending their skills? Is it my responsibility, or should I just have him watch office hours? Thanks in advance, mate. Have a good one.
Tell this person to watch office hours. Tell them to subscribe to my Twitch channel. Tell them to buy my role-playing game. Also, there's a donation link right down there. So, just go ahead and click that. Problem solved. Drink Pepsi. More seriously, though, I think, yes, this is going to be a real short answer. I think that, yes, of course they should watch Office Hours because that's what it's fucking here for, right? But in addition, the greatest tool you have to use to help this person is the love and support of a fellow game master and player. It can go so far to reinforce new game masters. And it sounds like you're in a bit of a spot because this person is inexperienced, sensitive to feedback, and as you say, makes mistakes. But on that last point, so do you. I do too. Every GM fucks up on the regular. You know, it's just a question of like fixing those mistakes as we go. It's not a question of never trying to make them. Jesus, I'm like, how many hours of 5th edition D&D have I played online, right? We're on episode 33, I think, of Court of Swords. We're on episode, God, who knows? We're deep into White Plume Mountain. We played a lot of Adventurers League. I still fuck up 5th edition. Like, come on. I screw up all the time. It's not about never screwing up. It's about screwing up less and screwing up in less impactful ways. Rules mistakes, continuity fuck-ups, not paying attention to important shit players say, getting distracted, being in a bad place when you're playing. Every GM does this. With frequency, according to their personal traits as GM, and hopefully with less experience, but not never, no matter how much they've played. So what kinds of mistakes is this GM making? If it's stuff like mixing up NPC voices or just getting nervous and gun-shy and not knowing what to say next, you can't fix that. Do not fucking try. They're going to improve with practice. You can offer them suggestions, like they read a book about improv, or they watch another GM run a game or two, or subscribe to that GM's channel. I don't know. You can give them some suggestions around helping feel comfortable about that, but being like, listen, man, in the last game, she was Scottish, and now she's Irish, and it's really breaking my immersion, so fix that. Don't fucking do that. Give them space. They know. Watch their little souls crumble every time they realize they're fucking up continuity. Don't try to improve that. Like, mention it gently if you want to, but don't jump up their ass on this one. The solution here is to just generally take the pressure off. Be very careful with them. Don't make the mistakes a big deal. Smile and nod. Play the damn game gracefully because we all screw up. They're not going to be perfect. You're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. GMing, playing role-playing games, like sex, is messy and awkward and funny sometimes because it's messy and awkward. If you can't laugh when something uncomfortable happens, you will not enjoy role-playing games. So it's okay. Like, when they make a mistake, don't cringe. Don't like, oh God, I can't do this. Laugh with them, right? Make it okay. Smile and nod and just be graceful. Play the game. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. If we're talking about rules mistakes, then okay. Sure. Give that some time to improve, but you can point it out when it happens, but be gentle about it. Say something like, oh, actually, I don't think that the rule works that way. It's on this page if you want to take a look. Versus, no, that's not how it goes. I get a +2, not a +1. Trust me. I've played a fighter 10 times. I get a +2. Notice the tone. You don't have to put up with the rules being done wrong, but you don't have to derail the whole game just to get what you want. Remember, learning how to play a game and learning to GM at the same time is really fucking difficult. And even if you already know the game as the GM, you're learning new and different stuff from when you're a player. I know the GM rules of Dungeons & Dragons so much better than the player rules. This is why I have people like Dave around. So I can be like, Dave, what is the player rule for this? I neither know nor care. You know this. I trust you. All new GMs, and I'm saying this to you as a new GM, mysterious stranger, and I'm saying this to all GMs. All game masters have the right, the Gygax given right to patient players. And the way that we help can either support that patience or undermine it. So yeah, okay. Your GM is sensitive to feedback. And that's something they need to work on. So this isn't for you. This isn't for you, question asker. I'm talking to your GM now because you've sent this video to them, haven't you? Yeah. Hello, new game master. Hi there. Your player here seems quite eager to help you gain skill and expertise as a game master. And hey, that's exciting. Listen, I hope they're not being too pushy with you. I hope that they're giving you room to improve on your own, because I know that this stuff can be hard and it can be scary. I hope you're listening to their criticism with an eye towards your own improvement. And I hope that both of you recognize each other as human beings with an emotional investment in the game, and that neither of you take things too personally when criticism comes up. I know it can be hard being told that you're not doing a good job, especially when you want so badly to perform, to be a good game master. I know that there's a lot of pressure there. I want you to know that even though I'm not there at your table, I don't get to see you play the game. I think you're going to do great. And I want you to remember that greatness takes time. So give yourself that time, even if maybe your players are being a little pushy and aren't giving you the time you need. Push yourself to improve, but do that at your own pace. I hope that other episodes of Office Hours might help you. And if you have any questions about your own game, once you get into it, I hope you feel comfortable asking me more directly about how to GM. My office door is open. Ultimately, the new GM and you, question asking Jordy, you want the same thing. You want the game to be an enjoyable experience. Skill is something we build. It's not something that we have. GMing, like most things that people learn, is like 70% practice, 1% raw talent, and 29% bullshit. I think the takeaway for all of us here is that there's this idea that criticism is hard to take. This is something we can all get better at, hearing people critique our work, but also learning to critique in a way that's actually helpful, not self-serving and shitty. It can be hard hearing, here are a list of ways that I think, or here are ways I think you can improve, because so often what we actually hear is, this is a list of ways in which you suck ass, loser. It can also be really hard to say, I want to help you improve, here's my advice, because sometimes we accidentally say, you're boring, this sucks, I'm better than you are at this, you're an idiot. Giving gentle critique is a learned skill as much as it is anything else. And hopefully with someone you consider a friend, there's room to accidentally be a jerk or accidentally be too sensitive over what was meant to be helpful. As always, be gentle with each other, talk it out, do this stuff in good faith, not out of some self-interested desire to fix someone's GMing so you can have a better time. Just be patient. Being a good GM isn't like lighting a fire. It's like growing a forest so that you can cut down a tree so that you can build a house in which to light a fire. And then having PCs murder you and rob that house. Your GM will do fine. Just be gentle with them, Jordy. Give them the care and love they desire and deserve. You'll be okay. If you want to get involved in future episodes of Office Hours, you can do so by visiting my website, www.adam-cole.com, clicking the Office Hours link, and filling out the form there. That will send me a notification that you have filled out the form. I'll be able to take a look at your question, listen to your lovely voice, process it, and then answer your question. I hope that it's helpful. I know that, context isn't always possible with these questions. So if you are recording a question, if you're giving me a question, feel free to give me more information than you think that I need. I'm not looking for brevity here. I can answer the question, but if you think that it needs qualification, don't worry about that. Ask in your own time at your own pace, but please ask. Generally, these are questions about game mastering. If you ask me things that are not about game mastering, I probably won't answer them. Though we'll see about that. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been episode 47 of Office Hours. I'm your host, Adam Coble. We will see you next time. Bye, y'all.